So for the moment, we are now going to the smart cities, I believe, with so SangKi will take us through the smart cities and show how to work together for smart city standards. So how ISO TC211 is doing its efforts with other committees, liaisons, internal, externals, to doing standards for smart cities. Please, SangKi.
Thank you, Simon. Can you see my slide now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Sorry. Hello, everybody. My name is SangKi from Korea, and I'm a professor at Anyang University. And also, I'm a convener of Working Group 10 of ISO TC211. First of all, I'd like to thank Chris for his excellent overview of the situation, and also very inspiring talk from Jennifer. And after her really inspiring presentation, my slide would be quite boring. I'm afraid, because I'm really focusing on the some specific points that we can work together for better smart city standards. So this is just contents that I'll be giving, but I'll just skip that. Probably many of you are very familiar with the situation. The data, we are living in a world that the data silos are everywhere, and it seems that the most of the data seems to be working within specific domains or related to few services. But when we try to integrate them and we use them together, there's a broken link between these silos, and there's no exchange of information and sharing of information. And the future that we all want to have is the right-hand side picture, that in a smart city environment, everything is connected and every data is shared and every service is available. So that is where we want to go. But how can we do that? So I looked at the some of the ISO TCs that has something to do with smart city. I should say that there are other standard development organizations such as OGC and the ITUT on the smart city subject as well, but I just limited my presentation to ISO TCs. Within the realm of ISO, there are 4 TCs, at least partially related to smart cities. First one would be ISO TC268, Sustainable Cities and Communities. And the ISO IEC JTC1 Working Group 11 is Smart Cities. And there's also ISO IEC JTC1 SC41, which is Internet of Things and Digital Twin, which is not quite smart city itself, but very closely related to smart city. And of course, we have ISO TC211. And from natural environment to the services, we start modeling the physical world and collect data and build the data and process and visualize and use them. So I followed this process to sort of classify the works being done by these various cities, standard groups, and try to figure out how many standards are actually has something to do with geospatial information. So we are here and we are looking at 268 and JTC1 Working Group 11 and SC41 for digital twin. And if you look at the number of standards that actually have been published or under the development, there are several, 48 and 50, about 54 standard that may have some relevance, and I try to classify them into various stages of from modeling to application level. And this is just the my own view and my own classification, and we will have plenty of chance to go over it and make sure that that is correct. But this is my first cut. For people who are not familiar with 268, TC 268 is a sustainable cities and communities. And as Chris actually mentioned about the SC1, Smart Community Infrastructures, and there are several working groups. Working group 4 is data exchange and sharing for smart city, smart community infrastructure. And they may have very big relevance to our work. And there are some relevant work in working group 2 city indicators as well. So I actually went through their standard work. Some of them are under development and some of them are published, and try to figure out what standard or work item we can work together. And I am not going to read all the things here. Just to show that the for example, second line, ISO 37156 is guidelines on data exchange and sharing for smart community infrastructures. And now we have been asked to make comment on the second line from the bottom, active work item TS 37172, which is the same thing based based on geo information. Chris also showed that in his slide as well. And this is my attempt to sort of bridging the both standards into this process that I mentioned. And the left-hand side is a 268 standard, and right-hand side, the 211 standard. And from modeling side, we can actually look at the what 268 is doing, and in terms of our framework and reference model perspective, and try to give some input to them. And from data build side, the ISO working document 37173 is information-based systems of smart buildings. We do have a joint working group, GIS BIM group. They may have something to do with their work as well. So this is a list of standard that we can actually look at and see if we can have something to work together. So in terms of processing side, as I mentioned, AWI TS 37172. From the data build side, I mentioned BIM2GIS conceptual level mapping standard 19166, as well as GIS BIM groups work. And modeling side, we should build data integration framework and governance for city data model based on TC211's framework and reference model. We should look at it. And I think that I remember that when we tried to contact them about the city model, they are not really aware of what's going on TC211 side, and that was a bit surprising, and that is one of the things that we are trying to solve here. I mentioned JTC1 Working Group 11, which is smart cities, and it is a group that was made to avoid duplicate development of standards and collaboration with each other between ISO and IEC, and they work on a lot of standard on smart cities as well. So I have table here, and if you look at some of the titles, upper level ontologies for smart city indicators, and a city data model here, foundation level concepts, city level concepts, service level concepts. The example of it, which is transportation, and model for data interoperability. So there are a whole bunch of things that we are really we have some relevance. So there are a couple of slides on this. ICT reference framework can be looked up from the framework perspective, and also a lot of metadata and metadata related things can also have something to do with their work as well. And working group 9's information management, and also moving features, linear referencing, and the GIS ITS joint working group work all have something to do with working group 11's work as well. So to sum up, we could work with JTC1 working group 11 on use of metadata and the related stuff, and also smart city conceptual model, and how can actually that can be viewed from our reference model perspective. And also we need to identify the role of our standard in the smart city ICT reference framework. So there are a lot of things that we can actually work on. Internet of Things and digital twin. Digital twin is pretty hot these days, and actually they had an advisory group 11, and they actually, after the review summary from the report from the advisory group 11, they made the working group 6 on SC 41 for digital twin. And here is the list for some of the standard that have something to do with ISO 211 standard, and some use cases and concepts and terminology, and vocabulary, and a whole bunch of sensor related work. So I naturally think about OGCs, the sensor web, SWE environment, and things like that. And let's see, some smart grid related things as well, and underwater things. And here's a sensor network testing framework and things like that. So a couple of slides here. Some working group 6 work, 7's work, working group 1 work have some relationship, as well as working group 10, 4, and 7 standard are related to their work as well. So for digital twin, we actually we should make some use case scenarios, and maybe build a pilot system to demonstrate the best practice with the digital twin, and also harmonized services interface between geospatial API and IoT sensor network API, And maybe on modeling side, down the bottom, we might want to look at some common conceptual framework and reference model between this IoT, digital twin, and GIS. So the middle part here, incoming interest or future interest is where we actually are trying to go from here. And this came from the actually the revision of standard guide project for UNGGIM, and I looked at the OGC's tech trends and things like that, and came up with these titles: domain related and user interfaces and all other stuff. This is just my own classification, but if you look at the some of the highlighted words here, and these are the things that are very much in the trend, and I try to map a few of the columns that are have some relevance, but this needs to be looked at in more detail. But as at least the modeling side, we gotta have something. We have to do something to resolve the reference framework. So how are we going to do this? First step is to understand what other people are doing, and basically, we don't know what they are doing, not really, and they don't know what we've been doing. So we need to see what's been going on the, some of these standard groups, and see if examine the current state, and maybe write a technical report and identify the common interest between different groups. And if we find some common interest, then we could create a joint workshop and try to develop common use cases and service scenarios, and maybe start a joint project and maybe test bed to see if it actually works. And finally, we could develop a joint working group working on joint standard. So this is the sort of suggested process for working together. And for a conclusion, I think that it's necessary to develop an integrated conceptual framework, because we don't know, we don't have the sort of integrated view of how all these things fit together. I mean, people work on domain specific areas and domain specific standards, but we really don't have any positioning of these standards and how they link together. So from another silo view of standards to sort of a better integrated view of standard, and through the some conceptual work and frameworks. And I believe the geospatial information standard would be the critical linking factor to make it possible. And that is my view, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Okay, Simon.
Thank you very much, SangKi, for driving us through this quite many complex ways of collaboration and contributing toward the smart cities from the location information perspective and standardization. I think there are already some questions there. Yes, indeed, from Thomas Kobeck. Thomas, would you mind just articulating your question, please?
Yes, I can do that. Actually, my question is, I have two questions. First of all, I've seen now that in your slides, ISO TC 268 is now looking at city data modeling. My question is, do they consider also the OGC standard city GML, which is really addressing linking different application domains by a common shared 3D model of the environment? So that's the first question. And the second question was, that I've seen you showed that the digital twin topic has just been added to JTC1 SC41, and so it's mostly now just under the umbrella of those people who are looking at IoT. And if you look at industry, many times also people think about digital twins being mostly addressed by sensors and by AI methods. And I personally, from my experience also, I'm deeply convinced that the digital and geospatial models of the environment are at least as important as the sensor parts. And so the question is there consensus about that, or is that not being seen? I think probably there is maybe consensus here in TC 211, but it should evolve, I would say.
Thank you, Dr. Kolbe. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your very excellent questions. First question regarding city data models. I cannot really say for TC268 because I'm not a member of 268,
Yeah.
but from the review that I got from their standard work, they are not really as far as the city data model is concerned, they are not looking at OGC's work. So that is one of the reasons that we need to let them know that there is a very comprehensive data models for what they are trying to do. So so that would be answer to your first question. By the way, I didn't mention about ITUT SG20, and they are also doing a lot of work on smart cities and data models as well. So so probably I need to expand my presentation to include other standard organizations to cover the topic more comprehensively, but that is later work. And for your second question, I agree that the SC41 has now IoT and digital twins, working group 6, but mostly these are IoT people, and then there are more things to digital twin than IoT, and then the environmental modeling and other sensors and AIs are all a big part of digital twins, and they are aware of it, but I'm not sure whether they have any consensus on environmental modeling side of it and the sensor networking as well. So I had a chance a couple of days ago talking with the standard expert in digital twin, SC41 people in Korea, and they are really surprised that we have these things, and we've been working on this. So it is a first step to let them know that there are a whole bunch of standards they can actually use right away, and then start building up from that instead of trying to reinventing the wheels.
Yeah.
That would be my answer. I hope that would be sufficient.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's also always good to point out that there is not just the standards, but also the data already. So there are many cities worldwide which already have data in these kind of representations. Yeah,
that's correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Thomas, for your question. Thank you, SangKi. I think Serena has a comment as well. Maybe Serena, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think it also relates to the discussion until now. I think it's a very nice idea to have at the bottom a geospatial information model. And I mean, we can say we've got it already, but like Thomas pointed out, so there's already data out there it's very difficult to break down the silos. So I think sometimes one also has to look for solutions for, converting data from one model to the other one, or mapping, the concepts from one model to the other one, because that will then make them interoperable. Maybe SangKi has got some ideas about how such an integrated model could work.
Well, Serena, it's a good question. I'll think about it. It's a big question.
So breaking up the silos is also one discipline
Yeah.
to master.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you very much, SangKi. Thank you for all the questions by the participants. So let's jump from the smart cities into the water.